Okay, welcome everybody. We will now have a presentation of Dominiks. He already spoke at the previous conference. We were very happy with the fact that he is flying all over the world to visit us. So we will now talk about challenges, failures and success of Crypto 2.0. So please a big applause for Dominik Zynis.
Thanks everyone for having me, and thanks boss for inviting me to come back. Definitely enjoyed coming back to Amsterdam, my third time this year. So I've spent the last year working on the master project, and prior to that I spent a lot of time kind of researching on what are the different types of technologies that are coming out there using blockchain tech to things beyond eCash. And I put this up because I didn't do this last time and I saw other people were doing it, so I thought, oh, who am I, right? So my background, I've been working with basically selling software since I was 18. So I think the first thing I say accounting software, which is kind of funny, but I guess that's. So then later on, I worked with a group of guys much older than me, and we came up with this idea of JSON, which was an alternative XML, because we saw that with the web and the way it was evolved, that XML wasn't really a good fit for communications between servers and clients. And then even at that time with that group of guys, they had been working on different kind of things for agoric systems. And we thought well, maybe one day JSON can be used for server-to-server communication for different kind of applications or web services that you might have. And in fact, today it's used with Bitcoin, so I'm really happy about that. I spent some time at Oracle and Hyperion, just again, more in a sales kind of role, but working on sort of data warehousing, telecommunications systems, things of that sort. Then I kind of switched gears and I started a company called Clorgy, which was basically just doing sustainability news, because I got really what are the technologies that are going to replace some of the systems that we've built over the last couple hundred years around energy and that sort of thing. And then I remember at one point when we were working on a smart grid system, I read about Bitcoin and I was like, oh my gosh, this is what this older crypto guy was telling me 10 years ago. This thing's gonna totally blow up. And it did, and it is still. And then so I ran a Mastercoin project. I joined that for a year, and then I just ended that at the end of August. Right now, I'm helping these folks from Seedcoin on a concept called Jetcoin, which is essentially using the blockchain for loyalty points for sports to try to teach people in a kind of more fun way how they can use crypto, how it works, and that kind of thing. Not necessarily using crypto kind of for giving them rewards for actions, rather than having them put in a lot of people want to have one Bitcoin. It's $500. That's kind of, for some people that is expensive. So this is kind of an inexpensive way where it can get integrated into their lifestyle and they can learn about it and get comfortable with it and that sort of thing. I'm doing trading, and then this presentation more is sort of about industry analysis. So eventually I'd like to take this and maybe work with some group of folks, if anyone here is interested in this, putting out kind of research reports on the ecosystem and the industry, and kind of highlighting some of the high coins that have really good development resources behind them, marketing and that sort of thing. So if we look at, when I was here ago, I covered Mastercoin, Counterparty, colored coins. I think I may have mentioned Proto Shares and Next. But now there's way more stuff out there, and this is just the tip of the iceberg, but these are some of the main ones that I kind of follow. And so I've tried to this is not really a great graph for this, but there really should be a taxonomy for this. So the ones on the left are kind of what I call platform level coins, right? So they're building a platform to allow other people to do different kind of things, like smart contracts, network level, or they kind of disaggregating what would be in a server into a more kind of peer-to-peer way of providing storage, network service, messaging, all sorts of stuff, right? So that's that. These coins are game-specific coins, and I'm really happy to see them because about a year ago they didn't really exist. And in the last 6 months we have them coming out. I think Hunter coin was the first one. The Game League coin, I haven't been able to download it yet, but they've got like some kind of Farmville style game thing going, which I think is really cool, and the design looks very nice. So that's pretty cool. There's Coin 2. I haven't had a chance to download that either, but apparently there is some kind of game attached to it. And then Free Trade came out with Lotto shares recently. The Lotto thing's not that interesting, but the way that he's doing the distribution is really interesting to me. Then the meta coins that have existed for, I guess, since about last year. And then the coins that are using the meta coin protocol to do kind of what I'm calling like app-specific coins. So they fulfill a certain kind of function. And then, so the interesting thing with this is that a lot of this stuff is built on Bitcoin. These are sort of bones with things added on top of it for the gaming industry. And then those are sort of platform level things, which I guess in a way you would see technically as if you put this together into like a sort of platform, but a disorganized platform, these are more organized. We'll see which one actually wins out, or maybe there's room for both in the industry. So the meta coins, just to kind of give you guys a high level of this, and I mentioned, I know a lot of you probably know way more about these things than I do, but I just made this for the average person, right? So the first thing that came out there maybe about 2 or 3 years ago was the concept of color coins, and that was adding colors to specific satoshis, right? So that some color represents some kind of asset or some kind of contract or something of that sort. That's still in development, and I believe there's a few websites using it, like My Powers, used to be called Coin Powers. That's using it. They, I think, rebranded into something called the Open Assets Protocol. I'm not sure what that is, but I believe that's just they've kind of gone through name changes. So that's the first project out there like that. The only issue with that one is that even though you can issue coins, they don't have, the way it's built, there's no ability to do peer-to-peer trading without some kind of trusted party. And then came along Master Protocol, which is Mastercoin, and that today I've worked for a year. They've struggled with the development on that. And if it's because it's a centralized organization that's running, and somehow that there's kind of dependencies that happen there that might break down or kind of slow down the development or the ability to kind of shift focus or shift resources or bring in new people, that sort of thing. But the idea there was for people to be able to issue assets, do peer-to-peer trading, things of that sort. They're coming out with, the interesting thing there that they've done recently is they've integrated the Mastercoin or Master Protocol libraries with Bitcoin Core, and they're coming out with a GUI, I believe, in the next week or so, and they're still on the peer-to-peer exchange. Now, the one that I think has, in the list of these, that has had the most success is Counterparty Protocol, which was based on the master paper, but it's a completely new implementation. And they basically have been able to do the asset issuance, the exchange, betting, a bunch of other stuff that they're adding, and they've got a pretty nimble organization. The cool thing with that is that, and I'll cover that later, but is that they actually have coins come out now too, so their ecosystem is growing. And it kind of shows you that maybe in this space, like the traditional kind of corporate form or organization doesn't really work as well as a kind of distributed open source model where people just can come in and out and that sort of thing. But that kind of also leads to some other problems. So as far as the crypto platforms, the main ones that are out there now are Bitshares X. So that was started about, I would say, about 2 years ago. Dan Laramere, I think his brother and some other folks involved in that. And actually, I downloaded it about a month and a half ago. I had some proto shares from mining them the year before, and I was actually pretty impressed with the client. I was like, wow, these guys put in a lot of time and effort. It looks really nice. They got these 10 seconds, which is incredible. They've got a bunch of other technologies they've built in for invisibility or anonymity, that sort of thing. DPoS, which is, so that's how they're able to get these 10-second blocks, like delegated proof of stake type thing. I don't know like what it's going to mean for the industry or for like if people will like that or not, because it's like it's relegated to like the top 100 mine get, or transaction processors get the rewards. And so I guess it's kind of a trade-off between, you know, obviously you have this trade-off between some level of centralization and how fast the transactions can get processed and that sort of thing. But it is a cool platform. The only thing is that to issue bit assets is super, super expensive on this platform. Before the price kind of spiked up to 100 something million, I went in there and said, okay, I want to like try issuing an asset, and I realized how it's going to cost $5,000. So I asked them, I said, well, you know, what's the deal? Like, that's kind of expensive when you can use these other ones and it's like almost free. And they're like, well, we wanna focus on the high end of the market, and if someone fork Bitshares X into Bitshares Me, they can go do that thing. But they have this unique kind of license model where the source is out there, it's open, but I believe there's something in the license that you have, if you fork it, you have to give a certain percentage to people that had invested into AGS, which is the shares, or had PTS, which was the proto shares. But I'm not really sure you're supposed to do the snapshot and that kind of thing. That's an interesting funding model where, you know, what you see with Bitcoin, people, you know, Gavin and all those guys are working really hard away at it, and then someone's just like, yeah, I'm just going to clone it and do whatever. But these guys are like, yeah, you can clone it, but you have to give us 10%. So, you know, we'll see how that kind of works out. Next is another one. I was supposed to invest in that, and they closed the round. I was upset, but they've done some really good work. There's, I think, the first ones that really had a working asset exchange about almost I guess at the beginning of this year, and they came up with with that coin. It was initially proof of stake after the funding, and I think the developer realized, like, and this is the problem with the meta coins, is that because there's no miners, they like as much attention, right? And so he came up with this concept of forging. I'm sure one of the guys here from Next is going to explain all that to you later. But I think that market standpoint and attracting users, that's a really, really good thing, because right now the community is a lot of people mine. I mined. Probably a lot of people here have. You know, you get interested when you can have a coin where you don't have to necessarily money into it, but you could just run your computer and you get a few coins and that sort of thing. The next one that I think is really interesting is MadeSafe. I learned about because they used the master protocol to release C coins for the MadeSafe network. I believe that they're going to have like their testnet 1 running pretty soon. They have like 1 or 2 line items in their project plan that they needed to get done, and then I think they're going to be, so I would say probably end of the year, early next year, probably around the time Ethereum comes out, we'll have MadeSafe. And so actually, like, MadeSafe and Ethereum are very similar, at least from a high level, that they really are built as platforms for other developers to come in and build the applications, right? So if you remember, like, maybe, I don't know, like, well, 20 years ago, Sun Microsystems, like, hey, Java to build apps, right? And so this is kind of like, in a way, sort of mirroring that. That's, I think, what's going on here. And I wouldn't be surprised that, you know, we have MadeSafe, Ethereum, maybe other stuff will come out for who knows. But it's really changing, like, how people think about the applications, right? Because today we have, like, there's talk about regulation and blah, blah, blah. But that's like, kind of like stuff. When you look at like security of application, even national security, all that kind of stuff, like you have countries attacking each other, data, whatever. Well, a lot of the stuff that we're building here addresses those problems, right? So, you know, you might have a regulator upset about money laundering or whatever, but like, you know, at the end of the day, you have the higher level politicians and the people have to, it's like, okay, yeah, of course there could be some people doing money laundering and whatever with these platforms, but like, you know, if you do that with cash, it's been for a long time, but are we gonna like start trying to regulate something that's creating this whole new industry because we're worried about this one when we could solve like this huge problem that we have, like for, I mean, these governments, anyone getting attacked, getting their data stolen, that kind of stuff. So I think these things are, you know, like this, it's going to be like huge, I think, this kind of stuff. And then we have Ripple. I don't know if it's really like, I wouldn't, you know, it's kind of a platform, but they sort of focus just on this money transfer thing, right? It probably could be more than that recently with something with like smart oracles, or I don't really know that much about Ripple, but that's something that with them and Stellar, it's another option out there, but I think it's kind of like thinly, it's not something like MadeSafe or Ethereum or even Next and Bitshares, which is, they seem to have more of this kind of platform level approach. So the Metacoin clones, the interesting thing with Counterparty, well, you kind of saw this with colored coins, except it's just completely disorganized, and it's just, I don't know, the traction's kind of not there. With Counterparty, we've already seen at least 3 live examples of clones, and the first one was ChanceCoin, which was focused just on gambling, basically. They do some interesting things. Now there's Dog Party, which is basically Counterparty coin on top of Dog, so they get 1 minute confirms rather than 10 minute, which I think is good for trading and that sort of thing. And you've got Clearinghouse, which is on top of Viacoin, faster, and they've implemented, I think, I don't know exactly what it's called, like Op80. So that's like 80 bytes, and the messaging that we wanted to have in Bitcoin, but then it kind of, well, it was supposed to happen, and it somehow got overturned or whatever. I mean, I don't know how the governance of the Bitcoin Development Foundation works, but maybe that's another topic that someone should probably cover at some point. But the cool thing with this is that it's growing. So the problem is that the problem that this presents is the developers of XCP don't necessarily directly benefit by this happening, but indirectly they do benefit because they're getting more developers that are familiar with their protocol, with their code, right? And those guys can contribute stuff back, make everything more resilient. Some people think and say that eventually Bitcoin will be forced into, or the Bitcoin devs will be forced into kind of fork that lowers the block time or whatever, who knows. But the thing is that it does contribute code back, and you get more people that are familiar with that. So when they go work with a company or a bank or whatever, and the bank says like, hey, do something in the crypto space, well, you know, if you got like 100 people that are familiar with the Counterparty code versus like something else, that's what they're probably going to use, right? Because like you don't want to have to spend 3 months relearning someone else's code base. I mean, that's just kind of how things work. So infrastructure coins, which is kind of related to the platform thing, is the Ethereum and MadeSafe are technically also fall under the infrastructure coins because they're providing like messaging formats, storage capabilities, things of that sort. But there's all things that are just focused on just the infrastructure, and they're leveraging the kind of platform stuff. API network is, I don't know if this is going to be successful, but it may be. They're trying to, or it may take them a long time. They're trying to use the systems we have so that we can get paid for different like API calls, right? So like today, if you use blockchain.info.com, whatever, blockchain. If you use their API, as far as I know, you don't have to pay. If you use it a lot, they send you a monthly invoice or something of that sort. But the idea is, and actually when we were talking about the JSON stuff, like way long ago, the idea was that if you make a call to have some service do something for you, you should have to pay something for it, right? But obviously you can't use a Visa card, and doing invoice pain in the butt, and it takes a long time. But with the technologies that we're building, you can eventually do these like little microtransactions for every little thing, right? It's like speeds up the economy basically because the money is like flowing faster as it goes up. So that's a good thing. And Storj, just using, I think he's right now using actually Datacoin, Counterparty and Counterparty protocol. He wants to use eventually Ethereum, tie in Ethereum, and MadeSafe as well, to basically just provide storage. on the blockchains. And so you're seeing like these services, like everything that is centralized, as David Johnston says, will be decentralized. That's true. And it's just it's a paradigm shift in basically how we build applications. And so finally, the app-specific coins. Right now, it's games, right? So we've got these game coins. The thing I'm working on with Jetcoin is loyalty points, and then you kind of similar to what Adam's doing with Let's Talk Bitcoin, where it's using coins to basically incentivize certain kind of user behavior, right? But I think eventually we're going to see the app-specific category will like explode, because people will start thinking about like, okay, I could use it for games, but I can start using it for all these other use cases. And I think that's probably just a matter of time, but I would say within the next few years that this category is going to get, they're going to pick and choose. They're going to say, okay, I'm going to use MadeSafe, I'm going to use Ethereum, I'm going to, like in the case of Storage, where he's using a combination and kind of integrating different protocol points together to provide a solution. So we'll probably see all that happening in the next few years as well. So onto distribution models, constantly evolving. That's what you can see in the industry right now. So it started with work, right? Bitcoin is proof of work. Then people came up with proof of stake. And so that's great for miners. It's great for botnet owners, right? When ProtoShares came out, someone just like put a giant botnet on it, and it was mining a lot of ProtoShares off that. But then people realized like, okay, that's not necessarily the most fair way to distribute the coins, right? It's maybe good for like the transaction processing, but for the distribution model, maybe there's like, so then you saw like kind of this crowd sale model where JR did Mastercoin, people sent in their Bitcoins and they got Mastercoins in return. A bunch of other people are doing this, Ethereum's doing this. But then there's like, with Ether, and I think Ripple maybe should get credit for doing it for the first one, aside a part of the ripples for, I think like nonprofit activities or something of that sort, or just giving it out to people for Bitcoin Talk. If you had an account, you got like 5,000 ripples or something like that for some limited time. And so, so people have been thinking of like distribution models of like, how do you get it out to the most people out there? Because, you know, if you go to people and say, hey, you just got some free money, like people are probably going to, well, check this out, or at least, you know, look at it for a minute. And so the interesting thing, where we see this now with like Stellar and Lotto shares, and it began with ProtoShares and MemoryCoin, was that wing is they're taking snapshots of another block and then saying to people, like with Lotto shares, he did this with Dog, where he basically said, import your Dog wallet into Lotto shares, and if you had some balance at this particular block time, you're going to a bunch of free Lotto shares, right? And then I think he's actually going to do a thing for BTC and ProtoShares people, and maybe some, well, but that's a really interesting concept, because you can like basically piggyback off the work that's been done by these other networks, rather than like trying to go market yourself. You just say, or you may already be a Lotto shares millionaire, or whatever, right? So that's I think that's an interesting thing, because it gives people, it's like you know, there's a cost of user acquisition, and like rather than spending the money on marketing, I mean, you still have word out, but it's this kind of stuff can be a little bit more viral, because people know that like I told my friends, like, do this because I know you had ProtoShares, so you're going to have a bunch of Bitshares X. So I think that's an interesting model. The one that actually I'm working on with the Jetcoin thing is trying to do it with cell phone verification. So because Jetcoin use something like Counterparty protocol most likely, or maybe we'll use like a bunch of ones like Next, Counterparty, whatever else is out there. But the thing is, like, it's not like a mineable coin, right? So how do you get it out? But the distribution is being done like through sports teams and through branding. How do you ensure that like someone just doesn't go out there and like create a bunch of fake accounts and they get a bunch of money and they cheat the system? So what I've thought of is like with cell phones, like, yeah, like I have two SIM, I can probably get 2 accounts or whatever, but I'm not really going to go out there and buy a bunch of SIM cards and pay €5 just to get, you know, a few more coins, that sort of thing. So you can be pretty sure that most likely you're not like too much skew, or like you'll have a fairly fair distribution using that. And then later on, other people can take our blocks, and then, you know, they already know, okay, these are all the unique addresses that are tied to these numbers and that kind of thing. The other thing is that organizational development. So as I mentioned before, it's not so sure that like usually when you're going to scale, you have this kind of like, we're used to these hierarchical organizations. I mean, there's other organizational types, but generally speaking, if you look around the world at all the big companies, they're like kind of like pyramids, right? They're not like very flat, they're not round or whatever. But the ones that I think have had the most success so far, like actually implementing and going live, like Bitcoin obviously is one, Counterparty as far as meta coins is another. Generally speaking, those that are open community and open source seem to be doing better than the centrally managed ones. But we'll see with Ethereum, they've got money, so you know, we'll see how that goes. MadeSafe also is managed by a nonprofit organization, and so we'll see like how they're able to scale. But it seems, at least to me, that the ones that are completely open, kind of fluid organizations seem to be able to scale better, or at least attract more people. And also because of the fact that you don't have like these costs. People are just putting in their time there, and they have to figure out on their own, how am I going to benefit from this, right? So they put in their time, they're not getting paid anyone, but maybe they have other clients that they're going and selling their services to, and in a way they then become advocates and evangelists, that's a particular technology. As far as license models, like, you know, everything generally you can clone and take and fork and whatever. The only one is the Bitshares model, which is unique. I think it's an interesting thing. It kind of like addresses some of the problems that the other ones have, like with, you know, Counterparty, they burned a bunch of BTC, or well, we burned a bunch of BTC, and the developers didn't get anything. So, you know, like how do you make sure that, maybe it's a good thing, I don't know. I mean, I guess the jury's still out. So we'll see in the next few years which one works better. Whether there has to be something built in to make sure that developers are being compensated, or if the developer, marketing people, and whatever are fine kind of on their own as freelance agents out there. So some of the success factors that have to be considered are like, what is the growth of the developer ecosystem? If a coin comes out there, I mean, it's just like, there's some people out there, they're like, I remember looking at this one company I consulted for a while back, and like CEO and like some of the executives, and they're like, dude, I was like, how did you guys start this? And they're like, well, we just went to a customer and we said, hey, we're gonna like fix this one thing, like Windows operating, you know, network management, like one stupid thing, pay us per computer or whatever, and we're just like hustling out there every day, coming out with like new things. And I kind of like, if you think about that, like that sort of is the ideal thing for the growth of the community. Like, you want the community thinking of new stuff all the time, right? And so the more forks you have is validating that is happening. And so there's this thing between like, are you like, if you're doing a pre-sale kind of thing, like, do you really want that money? Or is it better to go without that money to innovate and like bring in more people? You don't have like a few people kind of controlling and reallocating, because the thing is, you know that guy that controls that money is really going to make the right decision. Whereas if you have like this, everything's open, like people are just kind of battling, and like the dude who's going to come up with like some neat idea and a bunch of people adopt it, you know, I don't know, like, again, we'll see how it goes in the next year. I personally think that not having like kind of like the old school thought of like controlling money and like trickle down into the whatever to the org, that's not the future, in my opinion. Because the execution speed, when you have all these different people out there that aren't like kind of central, it's much faster. and you have this creativity and ability to pivot, because people can just take stuff and say, okay, well, this didn't work, but if you're like got money invested in it, you have like this emotional attachment to like stick with it. But if you don't, you could just take it, fork it, with it. If it doesn't work, you know, screw it, go move on to something else, and maybe that's going to work. And that's kind of like, I mean, look at like Thomas Edison. I don't remember the story of how long it took him for the whole light bulb thing, but like he was trying like everything for years, right? But you can't just say like, well, I'm going to like try to stick with this one material. He was trying different stuff. And so I think that having that ability is really, really important. The challenges I think that we're starting to see is like, how do you link blockchains? So right now we have to use all these exchanges, and the costs, you know, yeah, maybe the mining transaction fee is like really, really, but if you want to go from Litecoin to Bitcoin to Ducknote, X, whatever, you're going to have to pay those fees. You have to spend time to get stuff onto those exchanges. Those exchanges have to be insured. Maybe there's regulatory stuff they have to deal with. So I know there's people working on that. It would be great if the sooner it comes out, the better it is, because then that also opens up a lot of things as far as like, okay, so we have kind of platforms like Ethereum and MadeSafe, but then on the right side we had where people are kind of gluing things together and hacking them together. And if you had that, it then lets you kind of like, it gives you a way to integrate different blockchains and coins that we don't have right now. So that could potentially be like really rival anything like an Ethereum, but maybe some people, I mean, there might be room for both, so who knows. The other thing for me was like, when we were doing the Mastercoin thing, the problem was like, how do you go from BTC to coin? And the Counterparty has the same problem. They all have the same problem. It's like a two-step process. So basically, someone puts out on the peer-to-peer distributed exchange. Basically, you put a thing on the blockchain that says, I want to sell some Mastercoins, right? Then into a block, someone running the Counterparty or Mastercoin software, it parses that, sees that, and then you see that order and you say, oh, I want to buy those coins. So then an order onto the block where the software then sees that there's a match, right? Because there might be 2 or 3 or 5 people to get those other coins. So you then wait until you know that there's a match. Then once there's a match, send your BTC to the other address, and then the MetaCoin gets transferred. So that's kind of like, it doesn't work very well, right? And you could see like on these decentralized peer-to-peer exchanges, whether it's Counter Wallet, or the Mastercoin stuff, people, like, it's just too much of a pain in the butt. People just want to say, I want to buy this and like be done with it. No one wants to like wait for like 30 minutes, 2 hours to buy like $10 worth of some coin. So, so someone, I think, has to figure out a way to merge. It might have to be a brand new blockchain, but where like the MetaCoin, the main MetaCoin and the mine coin, the same thing. And so then, if you have that, then it makes things a lot easier. So, but you're not able to do this kind of crowd sale type thing, which is I guess you could do like a pre-mine crowd sale thing anyway. But you know, if you had that's kind of the ideal solution there. Funding developers, that's, again, I don't know if that's a challenge or if that's an opportunity, because people just have to fund themselves. Then they're just working on passion and also spreading the word, right? Because they go to what and say, hey, you can use this, I've been working on it, that sort of thing. Driving the enterprise and developer adoption, that's going to be like the bigger thing. Like even like at Ethereum, they got these different like languages that they're using. We had this problem with JSON actually. It's like we would go to companies and they're like, well, what the hell is this? No one knows this. We use XML and like everything's got to be compliant. And we're like, well, okay, you know, but it's better. but it takes a long time to get into the market. I mean, there's like millions of developers out there. They're not all going to start using it. You got to educate them. Go outside of the Bitcoin conferences, because you know, like, I mean, that they're not all coming here, obviously, so we have to go out to them. and also to enterprises, right? Understand what does the enterprise want and how to sell the benefit of, like, I mean, every day you hear these stores like Home Depot or something was responsible in the U.S. was responsible for I don't know, like a bunch of credit cards getting stolen and that kind of stuff. So like, why isn't, is someone going to Home Depot and saying, if you use Bitcoin, you're not going to have this problem, right? Like, you're just not going to have it. So why haven't they adopted it yet when they're getting all these embarrassing articles out there? Because, I don't know, maybe like the consulting firms don't have the right people yet, or whatever. But that has to happen, and I think it will happen. And then, yeah, so there's like this disjoint between the kind of crowd sales, pre-sales, and open source license, because like you see this with Mastercoin, with Counterparty. It's like, okay, well, and this is why maybe merging the two coins makes sense, because like, okay, I own a bunch of Counterparty coin and Mastercoin. I'm like, what can I do with it? The only thing I can do with, like, for example, with XCP is I can use 0.5 XCP to go register an asset. And so I told these guys, I'm like, look, like, you took money from people, whether it got burned or not, doesn't really matter. Like, you took people, and like, they're not really getting any, we're like, what are we getting in return? Like, yeah, developing stuff, but you could just as easily have developed all this and like not burn the BTC. Like, so there's this kind of like disjoint, and like, there's an obligation when you take people's money, whether or not it's burned or whatever you do with it, it doesn't really matter. But you still, like, there's like some sort of obligation that you're supposed to provide some value for that. I don't know what it is, but they need to, like, people need to think about that a little bit more. But maybe again, like linking the two coins together, doing a new coin that has that integration would kind of solve that. And then long-term developer attention, because like you see people just like project to project, and that's okay too. But like there's gotta be, like with Bitcoin, there are some people like Gavin have been around for like, well, I guess he started like, what is it, like 3-4 years ago? 2010, I think he started contributing. I did like a little statistical thing on trying to find Satoshi and have like a class cluster or whatever, but didn't find him yet. Yeah, you want to have at least 4 group of people sticking around for a while. And so if is dependent on money, like you got people that are motivated by money. But if you have a project that is not funded by money and that the people are just doing it because they really like it, then they're most likely around through the tough times as well. I mean, like, look at Bitcoin now, it's like 400, 500 or whatever. Like, some people might not be that excited because they're like, the price is going down. But if they're passionate about it, they're going to stick through it and kind of like use that as like, okay, how can we improve so that like, in a way, I kind of use the pricing thing as a market feedback mechanism that, like, we're not doing something right. Of course, you can't just like continually bubble from day to day, but when you go through these kind of troughs, I guess, you got to kind of reflect and look like, what can we do? And the guys that can stay on long term will have a more long term perspective, which I think is a good thing. And that's it. So there's my Skype. If anyone's interested in helping me with like industry analysis kind of stuff, I would love to like work with a few people on it, sell these reports to, I don't know, some Fortune 500 company or something.
Are there any questions?
I never get any questions.
Yeah, that's kind of strange.
It's overkill.
It's too much.
It's too much.
It's too much.
Yeah.
Kind of question, can you tell us a little bit about the type of research that you're trying to?
Yeah. So I mean, it's like very.
Yeah, just can you tell us a bit more about the research that you're trying to do, and what you just asked from the crowd here to contribute to?
Yeah, so what I would like to do is, like, I mean, for example, if you're researching a stock, right, there's like basic information, like how many stocks are available, like all this kind of stuff that's not, I mean, you could search around for it, but it's really hard to find. Like if I wanted, you know, luckily I went on bter.com. They have like a little bit. I'm like, oh great, I could cheat and like get some of that information. You click on like next or whatever, and it's like, oh, 1 billion coins. I'm like, oh, perfect. But I would like to have that kind of thing where there's information that kind of like describing technology, describing like some research into who's like the team behind it, like what it could be used for, that kind of thing, so that like it could be sent to someone who's a CTO at a company, or maybe someone who's like a finance trading person, but he can like look at that and say, oh, like this is what it's like a 2-page thing, and you kind of compile that up so that they could see like, oh, okay, I can use this, I can use Storage for this. I mean, like he runs like a document management company, and they buy all these servers, but like, you know, how do I explain to his? I would like to explain to his CTO, or CTOs like that, like.
Sorry, Dominik, please.
Yeah. Oh, am I not in the?
Yeah.
No. Yeah. So, I would like to have something where CTOs can look at that kind of stuff and say, okay, I don't have to go off through like Bitcoin Talk and all these other forums, listen to some guy like, you know, posting pictures of turtles having sex or whatever, and say the train is starting, like, you know, something a little bit free and nice for someone that doesn't really have a lot of time, but is interested in this kind of thing. And I think both from the corporate IT perspective, they should be at it, and also from the finance. But like, you don't see, like, I don't see Gartner or Forrester, like, I mean, some of the banks have come out with some stuff, but like, we're the people that know what the stuff is. So if we don't do it, I mean, I don't know who's gonna, I don't think the regular companies do it, because the thing is, the way Gartner works is, you go in there at a regular, like, you give them 50K, right, for analyst services. Oh, look, you appear in that magic quadrant magically. I don't know how that works, but, you know, Bitcoin, there's the foundation, but, you know, hopefully we're not gonna like bribe people.
Magic quadrant coin.
Yeah, exactly.
I know this guy who works at a bank, and it's a Dutch Rabobank, and I've heard some noise from there that they're not very positive about Bitcoins, but also that people are thinking about creating their own solution, so that banks are trying to band together to create something themselves. Now, technically, they probably have the capital to do so,
Yeah.
but what is your view on this subject?
I think that.
Let me first mention, we are talking about a bank screwed European customers for a few billion.
But no,
and
but
that's only the proven billions. And nobody went to jail for it. Only the director went on holiday because he was already going with. So please keep that in mind.
Is this the same bank that does the cards?
Yeah,
Okay.
So
No, but I mean the cards for trains in Amsterdam.
No, it's a different.
Okay. But that's another opportunity there. I have to pay 50 euro cents every time for a card. I'm like, this is ridiculous. 50 cents. This is what Satoshi was talking about. So these 50-cent charges, man. Come on. So and the interface could be nicer too.
From a business perspective, what can you do against these
No, but actually you want that to happen, because the thing is, like what we talked about before, like linking the different blockchains. So if they have a blockchain of their own, and we have a blockchain of our own, and other people have whatever, a bunch of stuff out there, once you can start linking them together, the money will flow to the right places.
No,
you know?
no.
Yeah, well.
Can I just say, I don't think banks are going to create something that's
But talk in a microphone.
for sure. I don't think banks, can you hear me? I can't hear myself. I don't think banks will create something that's decentralized, because it will go against the concept of their business. So the core fundamental principle is, hide the information, take advantage of the clients.
Talk in the microphone.
Yeah, and the people basically get the advantage of everything that goes on. So even if they do come up with, Microsoft was coming out with their own coin, which they said similar to Bitcoin, but this one is actually useful. And I just found it really funny how their mentality is. They think it's still a joke, but really it's something that they couldn't have come up with if they put all the organizations together, because it would need to remove the idea of company, you know, you kind of come into this sort of company mentality, you come in with this like person-to-person mentality. So even if they do, I think they will fail. And many people have tried to. I think Jeff is on already.
Please talk in the mic.
Yeah. One of the financial core companies came up with their own coin, and within weeks, the whole Bitcoin community was all the same. Scam, get rid of it, don't support this. So it's really good to see that the people, even in the core, if something does come up, they attack it straight away.
Yeah, well, the thing is that with, I don't know how they plan on designing this coin, but the thing is, if it's centralized at all, I mean, that's like 90s, in the 90s and 80s, that stuff's already through, so it's not going to really work, because if it did work, people would have done it 20 years ago. So their only other option is to do it blockchain-based. I don't know, they're going to control miners maybe, but for what? Like, you're going to control the miners so you could, I don't know, like, basically, trying to think of, disprove the integrity of your own transaction processing system? No.
I think you can see part of it already happening.
What's that?
We had a talk, a presentation about Stellar yesterday.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I proposed is that banks are going to co-opt Stellar and move parts of it that they don't like, particularly the transparency. Today I heard from somebody that Fido Bank is already using Ripple technology internally. For their internal settlements, they use Ripple technology. No miners, consensus in there as offices, as far as I understand it. But no transparency, because the network is not in their chain, the blockchain Ripple and all the ledger is not made public. And I think this is already happening, you can see it now. And this is exactly the forces that are at play. They dislike the transparency aspects. They like the mechanical and mechanized distributed aspects. It makes it also nice to use such systems between banks. But they don't need the absolute distrust. They can do with a little trust. They have contracts, how things are covered and stuff. So I think we are already seeing now how the Bitcoin and related technologies, distributed consensus methods are being co-opted by banks, are starting to be used internally. And they get rid of like, and I think they are huge players. They might move much faster than we expect. Be happening everywhere now, as far as we now know, and maybe Fido Bank is just one of the few.
Which exactly?
Fido Bank.
No, which technology are they using?
Ripple.
Ripple, okay, I thought you said Ripple. Alright.
So they're using internally because they don't like transparency aspects.
Yeah.
They love the transparency aspects.
Yeah. Interesting. No, for sure within an enterprise, you can use the technology as sort of like a internal accounting system rather than.
But it also talks to adopting technology and especially the stuff you were talking about in the public sphere, they do privately. All those challenges they are also running.
Yeah, but there's coins out there like XMR, for example, that not every coin out there wants to have like an ledger system anyway. You know what I mean? Some people really want anonymity.
Blind systems that run on public ledger are illegible for most people. I fully expect that. And when that is happening, we might see the banks also either co-opting that or fighting it. I don't know. Yeah? But be sure that the big corp moving of money and moving of assets is going to get involved anyway. And I don't know whether that's a warlike situation or.
I mean, well, because the thing, if you look at the current economy, like Western economies, they're all based on fiat, where the money by the central bank, and the central bank can kind of like loan out money to the other banks or change the fractional rate of lending and that sort of thing. But the issue with like the Bitcoin stuff is that you can't. The only way you can do fractional banking, but it puts like tremendous risk on the bar, is if you create like other kind of coins. Then you lend those coins out, but you have to like somehow make sure the exchange rate status. I don't see how that's even. I don't know how that's even possible in this kind of world. So that is but I mean that's like another problem for the Bitcoin thing is like. But it might be like a fundamental shift in the economy is like right now we're like a debt-based system, you know, and so their point is not you cannot do debt with Bitcoin. Well, you can, but it's. You know, Bitfin X or whatever, but it's a closed system that you can't take those Bitcoins out of there. So, and anyone that's doing leverage trading is, oof. I've heard some horror stories.
I think though that we'll see the banks trying to get into the scene by first creating their own closed source, as it were, solutions. And it looks a lot like the early development of the internet, where a lot of companies just try to grab their share and say, this is our part of the internet.
Yeah.
And to a certain extent, some have even succeeded. If we look at how many people use Facebook and Google, for example, we can see that a large portion of the internet is now more or less, the mind share belongs to one or two companies, and they have a lot of power. Now, you can be all paranoid about that, but for me, it's more like looking at it, okay, how can we solve this problem? And in the crypto sphere, it would be nice to see at least, in 10 years, 50% of this crypto sphere, these coins, not being controlled by central organizations. That, for me, already would be a great step, a great milestone. Because I think right now at this point, these banks are moving very fast.
I honestly don't think you have to worry about that, because the thing is that if you read some of the research stuff from I think even the CIA had a report on this, in the 90s, they were looking at this, and as soon as you have to trust somebody to do that, I mean, the whole thing about Bitcoin is that you don't have to trust anybody, right? Now, maybe there are people that, well, right now, obviously, there's a lot of people, 99% of the population, that trusts somebody with their money and their money system. But as long as, you see the adoption with younger people, that means that younger people are, compared to the whole, are less trusting of a central authority, whether it's a bank or the Federal Reserve is a corporation anyway. So the thing is, they could try that, but the thing is, they're describing is not really any different than technologies that existed already in the 90s, where you could use crypto to do these kind of transfers, but there was still a central authority to do that, and that stuff didn't take off. So
I agree, but at the same time, when the internet came up, there was this whole cypherpunk movement. Without the cypherpunk movement, we will probably not have much open encryption options today. And I think it's very important that we do look at what we need to do to make this happen. It's not something that will happen automatically. And if we just let it go, and we trust that Bitcoin's perfect blockchain will solve all our problems, it's not a magic pony. It's not going to be, because other companies and organizations will take their share. And for me, that's a very important point to really to fight for, because otherwise, I think it's automatically going to become a share of a larger organization.
Well, the thing is, if I actually never have read this book, but I've been talking about it forever because I mean to read it. But the synopsis of the Hayek's the private money thing was that there would be competition. There were many private monies out there, and that there would be competition among them, and it's different kind of people will want different kind of things. So it really there's nothing necessarily wrong if you really trust somebody or some organization and you want to use them, then I have no problem with that. Personally wouldn't, but well, I guess I do, because I do trust just out of holding my Bitcoins and that kind of thing, right? So there's still I don't know, I think it's a good thing that they're looking at it, because it's the barriers for the flow of liquidity between one system to another. I don't think it's really a bad thing. I think it's a good thing.
Me neither. I think it's a good thing. I think, however, it's also good to create choice, and that's exactly what I as well. So I like the thing that you said, because connecting multiple blockchains is what I'm working on right now, and I think that if we do that, we'll have choice next to the central exchanges, because there will always be a reason for them. They exchange fast, for example, and a decentralized system will always be slower. So each has its own pros and cons.
Yes.
But yeah, I just want to make a point. We need to really make a point for this freedom. And if we do, I think...
Yeah, but I think it's also educating people. I mean, that's why I'm helping these guys with the Jetcoin thing, is because they're like Eric, for example, his background as a photographer, he didn't nothing about the actual cryptography and the techno stuff that we know. But he's hey, I know that the people in sports are interested in it, And that's a way to like get the word out there, to get people playing. Like a lot of times people have to play with stuff. Like Bitcoin's kind of serious right now, hacking, and it costs a lot of money. People have to play with stuff before they kind of like really start using it. And so we have to, I think as a like group, we have to think of ways, and which is why dog is really interesting, is because they do play kind of things. Right? I mean, now with the dog party thing, they're like sending each other hamburgers or whatever. Not real hamburgers, but you know, they're doing that, but that's a fun thing, and it gets people to learn and to trust. Oh, if I send it, because first time I sent a Bitcoin, I was like, is it really going to get there? Yeah. You know, and I'm like, I'm gonna try to call up Mt. Gox. I'm like, why isn't it there yet? It's been 5 minutes. You know, so but I was right to be paranoid about that.
You were.
All right, I have to go. I have to meet my friend, but. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. See you next time. I tell me there's an I between the N and the S.
We'll be in contact.
It's Amsterdam.
I think we'll have a break now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Dominik, thank you for giving your presentation. We'll have a short break or a short buffet, and try to remain as much as possible to the program. So go to the buffet room, have some bread and some fruit.
What time do you want to start?
1 o'clock. So.
Do we have like hour? Okay.